Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
Well, there has been no issue that we've consistently spent more time on than the issue of the JFK assassination in general, and specifically why the government, including Democrats and Republicans alike, have violated I would think, both the letter and the spirit of the 1993 law regarding releasing records related to the John F. Kennedy assassination. Because the more they fight to redact these records or to keep them from coming to light, the more I want to see them, and the more suspicious it makes me about something. Donald Trump announced that he would be revealing these records. Here he was last month.
We are tomorrow announcing and giving all of the Kennedy files. So people have been waiting for decades for this, and I've instructed my people that are responsible, lots of different people, put together by Tulsi Gabbard, and that's going to be released tomorrow.
Now, the man that knows more about this than anybody, and he certainly furthered my informational awareness on this issue, is Larry Schnapf. He's an attorney in New York who has been fighting for this issue for a long time and filed a federal lawsuit against President Biden and the National Archives demanding the release of, at the time, all the still classified assassination documents. Larry, first, let me thank you for staying up late with us, and let me apologize for the miscommunication that we had last week in terms of trying to get you on the program. Clearly, there was something getting caught in between our emails, so I'm glad we finally got you.
I think it was probably the CIA or the NSA playing with us.
No doubt, no doubt. Larry, before we get into what's in these documents, which is what I'm most interested in and what I think most of the audience is interested in, explain to people your background with this, the lawsuit that you filed, and how long you've been with this issue, and why this is such an important one to you.
Well, I mean, I've been interested in the Kennedy assassination since it happened. I was 10 years old when he was killed. And we actually went down to the creek behind my house. My friend called me up and said the assassin is in New Jersey, and we were going to capture him with our Boy Scout knives and rope. But so after President, I've always been interested in the topic. I've done independent research. I've written, I did articles on it. But then I got involved. I used my legal career. When President Trump postponed the records in 2017 and 2018, everybody was shocked because we thought that the October 26, 2017 deadline was set in stone. And so I filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the National Archives, and they didn't respond, so I had to sue them. And I got thousands of pages of records, which are not in the collection, to find out what happened. And then it became apparent that the National Security Council hijacked the process. And actually, the National Archives was objecting to the postponement of the records, and they got overruled by the National Security Council. And when President Trump went on Twitter and said he was going to release the records, they already had written a draft order for him to sign, executive order postponing the records. So, once President Trump left office, then President Biden came in. A lot of the research community was hopeful that maybe President Biden would do something. And when he postponed the records, that's when we said, okay, we got to fight this. So we filed a lawsuit against President Biden and the National Archives for failing to comply with the act. The lawsuit is ongoing right now. We're kind of in abeyance while we're waiting to see what is produced. And then depending on what's produced, we may or may not continue with the lawsuit.
At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. Why were there so many delays of full disclosure in both President Trump's first term and with President Biden? Why would they just not release all the documents as they were required to do under the law? Do you believe that it's due to national security concerns, or is there another reason?
Well, I mean, that's what they're alleging. And, Mike Pompeo went into the White House, the Oval Office in 2017 and 2018 and told the president, you can't release this. There's names here that, will jeopardize our ability to get new sources and new undercover agents. But it's just a symptom of the problem with overclassification in our country. And also, these people don't want the American people to see what they're doing. So Justice Brandeis once said, in the early 1920s, that the best disinfectant is sunlight. And if these people keep making decisions behind closed doors and their documents never get out to the light of day, they're never going to be second-guessed, and we're never going to learn why they did what they did. So this is really hyped up national security. When you start seeing the redactions released, most of them are really trivial. Now, there was something really important last week. This much-awaited Arthur Schlesinger memo that – now, this is not related to the Kennedy assassination. It got pulled in because it's part of the era. But Schlesinger had written a memo at the request of President Kennedy about how to reorganize the CIA. And there were 2 pages that were completely blacked out. And they just recently got unredacted last week. And what we learned from those 2 pages was that what Schlesinger was telling the president was that when the president came into office, 47% of our embassy employees throughout the world were actually CIA cover agents. They were using the embassy as a cover, which meant that the CIA was essentially controlling our foreign affairs. And that's what he was trying to communicate to the president. We also found out this week that John McCone, who was the CIA director when Kennedy was killed, his office was bugged. We never heard the tapes of, the communications, what's going on in his office. I mean, these people were just out of control. They were like a government within a government.
And that's, I've noticed that when I've spoken to people that believe there was a conspiracy, a lot of times their view on what form that conspiracy takes differs, whether they were conservative or liberal.
Yes.
But one of the frequent refrains is that the deep state or the security state, whatever you want to call it, I'm trying not to be deliberately provocative, that they went after Kennedy because he was going to go after them. Does what was been revealed in these documents, does it support that theory? Well,
I guess there's more information coming out that could support a motivation. There was also a document about the it was the president's Foreign Affairs Committee, and he walked in on the meeting, and they were making plans about what to do in certain countries, and he nixed it, and so you can see that what you can see from some of these documents is that people that believe that senior people in the intelligence or Department of Defense, they may have had a motivation, but it's hard to believe that, at least for me, that people very, very senior there would risk their lives and their careers to do something. To me, it's more got to be the operational level, because those are the people also that are most invested, like the people in Jamwave. I mean, I think that Carlos Marcello paid for the assassination. It was organized by the Miami guys, because they're the ones that ran the Bay of Pigs, and they're the ones that got really angry at the president for basically undermining the Bay of Pigs, and they found out that Kennedy was having a back channel with Castro the very day that Kennedy was killed. Jean Daniel was meeting with Castro to share a message with from the president. So, you could, the problem is that people now with all these different theories are going to start looking at the documents, and they're going to be looking at them to see if there's anything there that reinforces their thinking and their what they believe happened, as opposed to looking at the documents just objectively. Where are the facts taking us?
Well, I'm going to ask you about that in a second. If folks are just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Moreno. My guest is Larry Schnapf, who is the go-to expert on the release of these JFK assassination documents. All right. So once these documents were released, first, let's start with what most of these documents are. The president put the number at about 80,000 pages, and then a little later, I heard some media reports that it was actually 80,000 documents, which is a very different thing. Which is it? Is it 80,000 pages or 80,000 documents? And what are the bulk of these documents?
So there were 80,000 pages approximately. We really don't. There's a moving number. There's a major problem with the JFK collection. That's the collection of assassination records that the National Archives is in possession of. There are different numbers about the number of documents that are actually in there, but 80,000 pages were released this past week. Most of them were CIA documents. There's FBI. There's House Select Assassinations Committee. There were some transcripts of Church Committee. Transcripts of CIA guys, Angleton and William Harvey and stuff. Their transcripts were finally released mainly in full. So it's it's a smather. Most of it's CIA, and then you have FBI, principally with FBI, MLK, and also the Mafia, and then some House Select Assassinations Committee files and the Church Committee file. That's basically the bulk of it. But the thing that everyone has to understand is this is not President Trump's order was that all records in the possession of the federal government should be released, and the collection does not represent all the records in the collection. There are still records that are out there that have not been transferred to the National Archives. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Interesting.
And I'm going to actually be reaching out to Representative Luna. She is the chairwoman of the task force on declassification of federal secrets. She's having a hearing on April 1st. Believe it or not, April 1st. She tried to have April 2nd, but the hearing room was taken. And I'm going to give her names, documents that are not in the collection. I'm going to be contacting her this week. Documents that are not in the collection that need to be put in the collection, because I don't want them to announce mission accomplished, because this is not what was released this week. Yes, it's all the records that are left in the possession of National Archives, but that is not the universe. For example, when the Records Review Board went out of business in September of '98, they had asked the CIA for thousands more documents, and NARA was supposed to follow up and never did. There are records that Bobby Kennedy took from the Oval Office after an hour or so after the assassination. Those have not been released. We don't know what those are. There's another 2,400 FBI files that allegedly were discovered on February 10th. We haven't seen those yet. The president did order sealed records to be released, and the sealed records that I'm interested in are the Carlos Marcello tapes when he was in jail in the mid-'80s. He allegedly confessed to his cellmate, who was an undercover agent for the FBI, and there's a tape that was sealed. We never heard that before.
So Larry, obviously I want to hear that tape and see those documents too. It's clear based on your description there are still documents that are being withheld. Why are they being withheld at this point? What is the real story, and what is the stated rationale for withholding any of these documents?
They the CIA claims that they have complied with all their obligations under the JFK Act, and they're just not giving up these documents. There's another set of documents. We just learned like 2 years ago that there was this investigation by the CIA over the weekend of the assassination through March of '64. They sent this guy, Donald Heath, down to Miami. He was interviewing exiles, and he sent a letter to the House Select Assassinations Committee in '77 saying, "We gave these reports daily to the CIA. They should be in this guy's office. We've never seen them," and they denied they exist. And until someone forces them to cough up these documents. They are so protective of their documents. And, they kind of view information in documents as something you trade. I mean, it's amazing. It's there's value to information, and they hold things really tightly. Some of the things that came out this week was the extent to which that the CIA and the FBI were mad at each other about these intelligence operations. The CIA had put listening devices in our embassy in Mexico City. FBI didn't know about it. The FBI was pissed about it. I mean, there was it's amazing the stuff that goes on in the country. And so they're almost at war with each other as much as they were with our enemies.
Hi, I'm Cyndi Lauper. My scalp was covered with psoriasis, which could lead to psoriatic arthritis. But Cosentyx treats both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at Cosentyx.com or 1-844-COSENTYX.
Cosentyx works for me.
Ask your doctor about Cosentyx.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
In terms of what's already been released, some people have said it's not really anything significant. I've heard comparisons to the Al Capone's vault. I've heard comparisons to the Epstein document release. How significant do you think what we've already seen has been? Is it a big deal?
So, for the most part, what's been released, now we always knew there was not going to be a smoking gun saying, here's how we're going to kill the president. So anyone that thought there was going to be a memo like that, I mean, these people don't put stuff in writing. In fact, the guy that was the assistant to Fauci was quoted in an op-ed piece last week saying, we know how not to create emails. And if we did create them, we know how to destroy them. Right. So this is something that bureaucrats learn. What we've learned a lot about is the way our country covert operations were conducted. So a lot of it is interesting history about the way our government conducted itself in the 60s and how, Kennedy was kind of out of the loop in some things. We did also see that there's a confirmation that the CIA was monitoring Oswald, almost from the beginning. So they had interest in him. Now, Jeff Morley thinks that if you read together, this is a mosaic. So, the reason the CIA wouldn't let a lot of these documents out, they use the mosaic theory. They say even if we give what looks like an innocuous document, it's going to give our adversaries a little piece of a puzzle that they can put together. And so, by the same token, when this information comes out, we can kind of start putting together a mosaic. Now, Jeff Morley thinks that, and he's my co-host on JFK Facts podcast, that when you start looking at a number of different documents, it suggests to him that Angleton, who was our counterintelligence person at the CIA, actually was running Oswald from 1959 on. Now, you're not going to see any document that says that, and I'm not quite sure. I'm not at the point as a lawyer that I can make that statement, but certainly Jeff feels that there's enough smoke there that would make that to make that statement. But we learned a lot more about the way our country operated, but except for that, maybe that revelation about tracking Oswald a lot earlier, we haven't learned a lot about the assassination itself.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. There was some controversy over people's social security numbers and other private information being revealed. I know even Joseph DeGeneva, the attorney who's a fixture on conservative media, he complained about this. Is that a big deal at all?
Yeah, so I think what happened is typical with President Trump. He got ahead of the bureaucracy, and he announced, like, on St. Patrick's Day that the records were going to be released the next day. So that night, everybody was scrambling. They had to basically take all the Department of Justice attorneys who work on national security. They each got like 500 documents, and they had to go through them overnight. So I'm a little surprised that the Social Security numbers of living people were released. You generally don't do that. And then, of course, dead people, that could, while it doesn't maybe impact people that are alive, I mean, that could create the ability to, if those names have not been properly recorded as being dead, that could allow criminals to use those numbers. So you generally don't do that. And I know two people, I have friends of two people whose Social Security numbers were actually disclosed.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're those guys, it is a really big deal. All right. In terms of the documents themselves, a lot of them, as you allude to, relate to Cuba, the CIA, Oswald's activities before the assassination. The stated rationale to keep them secret, it was bogus, right?
Yeah. So what they're basically saying is we have names here. And if we release the names, we promised these people that we would never disclose that they worked for us. And if we disclose their names now, then it's going to be difficult for us to get new people to work for us undercover because they're not going to believe our promise. So, but there's nothing that I've seen. I'm not an expert in national security, but phone taps. I mean, there was one memo that was released it instructed people how to do phone taps. Now, is that a real technique right now that we have to be worried about?
Yeah, I hope not. Jeez. All right. Before I let you go, when the president gave his initial order, he said that he was going to order the release of documents not just related to JFK, but related to RFK and Martin Luther King Jr. As it stands now, we haven't gotten those documents yet, right?
Right. So there was supposed to be. So what the president specifically said was he asked for a plan. So he had a plan for the JFK records and he had a plan for RFK and MLK. The RFK and MLK plans were supposed to be, I think, March. I'm thinking for a second. No, they were like February 25th or something. So we don't know if a plan has been submitted. Again, these people were working overtime. I mean, President Trump basically is the first president to bend the will of the national security apparatus. And I helped organize a group that sent a letter to the president, the White House counsel, about the RFK records. The RFK is a little more complicated because a lot of the records are not federal records. There may be state or local records, whereas MLK records are federal mainly, but there are also some local, Memphis police. So that should be hopefully that's forthcoming soon. I mean, we're still going to get so there are two batches of records that we know for JFK that are coming. One is the 2,400 pages of the newly discovered FBI records, and then there's the sealed records. There are 6 transcripts of interviews that Jackie Kennedy and Robert Kennedy gave between 64 and 65 to William Manchester, but they're right now protected under the statute, but with a deed of gift. They can't be disclosed. Jackie Kennedy made arrangements they wouldn't be shared until 2067. And it's really curious because both of them did not believe in the lone gunman theory. And Congress is either going to have to amend the law to let those transcripts come out, or they're going to have to ask Carolyn Kennedy to release them.
Lastly, Larry, I know you've been friendly and had a good professional relationship over the years with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He has been very vocal about how he never believed the official story of the Warren Commission, and he's been pushing for, greater document release for a long time. Have you had occasion to speak with him since these documents started being released? And without revealing any personal conversations, can you tell us if he's pleased in the direction that we're going when it comes to public transparency?
Well, he just, when I texted with him last week, he just thanked me. He just said he was very, very gratified for all the work that we're doing. Tonight, the president unfortunately said something that is really got a lot of people in the research community upset because, he just said off the top of his head, well, yeah, I think Oswald did it. He may have had help. And, he doesn't know, he doesn't have any information about the assassination. So, I know Roger Stone. Roger Stone was a big influence on getting President Trump to release the records. And Roger Stone told me that, the president really never had any real interest in the assassination. In fact, when Roger Stone went to him and said you should release his records, he said, why? What's there that we need to, So he doesn't have any personal knowledge. He never saw any records. So people are going to really get upset with him, I think, because of what he said tonight. But I verified with my sources that regardless of what he said, his executive order is still in effect. The agencies are still going to be carrying out his wishes. And, we're in a historic moment, actually, because next month we have the House hearings. And, we're in a moment where we may actually get to the bottom of things. Yeah, I'd say we're kind of like on third base right now.
Well, that's very exciting, Larry. You've been doing a great job. Appreciate you explaining it all to us. I hope we can chat again soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to comment on any portion of our conversation, feel free to give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight. In times of emergency, AM radio could be your only source of information.
Manufacturers like Tesla and several other car companies are getting rid of AM radio.
AM radio is a part of the emergency alert system. Here's former Vice President Mike Pence about AM radio.
Talk radio and WABC and elsewhere around the country all took off, and it's become a meeting place for the American people. It's where we come together, we get information, making sure that these new electric vehicles include FM and AM as well as all the other new technology, I think is a real priority for the free flow of information in America.
Write your representative today. Go to saveamradio.com. Sign the petition. Go to saveamradio.com.